Happy St. Paddy's Day to everybody who managed to get up in time to watch this. I'm sure tomorrow morning will be more challenging. Welcome to our garden at Ballan Temple. Pam's behind the camera. Say hi, Pam.
Hello. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Don't
you love those earrings? You can switch the camera back if you like. I'll leave it up to you now. Let's begin. This is an introduction to a course which we're going to do over the next 7 months. One a Saturday each month, the last Saturday in each month for the next 7 months, starting this month. And basically it's an opportunity for you to hear about all of our failings as we've tried to make this place work on fairly limited resources. I'm just going to give you a bit of a tour today and tell you a little bit about how we got here. So if you look over to the cow shed over there, that's where I started with my tools. And if you look to the left there at those willow trees, that used to be plot 1 when we started this back in the end of 1999, 2000. And if you look up the field known as the Cantry Bog, that is where I had 8 plots. And it was pretty crazy. You can imagine something called the Cantry Bog was maybe not the best place to start a garden. But I didn't feel that we could go into the walled garden because this is my parents' house and I didn't want to cause too much trouble. Anyway, after a couple of years I decided to start causing trouble. So let's go into the walled garden. And here are the plots. That's the main plot area. And if you continue to walk a little bit, well, you can see our tent over there. That's for gatherings. That was built 11 years ago. And we've had a few parties there. Perhaps you'd like to join us for one of them. The fruit cage is pretty chaotic and partially collapsed. It was originally destroyed by the big snows in 2010, and we've rebuilt it a couple of times, but it's a lot for a little boy to do. So here are the plots. It's a 6-plot rotation at the moment. Let's just walk around and I'll point them out. As you can see, the plots have been tilled recently. Each plot is about 4.5 meters wide, and that just fits into this space. If you look in the middle, you can see 4 lumps, and those used to be hazel trees. When we came in here, the weeds were this high, and it was just inundated with couch grass and brambles and thistles. Those trees were huge. At the far side, you can see a beech hedge. Well, that beech hedge used to be beech trees as tall as that hornbeam that rises up above the greenhouse. So we had it was almost like the edge of a woodland here. And we worked hard to get it out. I've got to give big thanks to Tommy Townsend, Simon Lukash and Gosha, and of course Gustav van Mulders, who was a very experienced horticulturalist who came over in about 2003, 2004 to help get the garden into a biodynamic cycle. But one of the first things we did was to clear this patch by hand. It had been ploughed by Dermot Roberts, thanks Dermot. And then we came in and removed all the grass and the roots of the grass by hand. And it's still a pretty heavy job. You can see in the soil here, okay, that is the root from the grass. And that's because this plot was left. I don't till as much as would make my life easy, because tilling destroys the soil structure. It's not good for the microorganisms, it's not good for the fungi, it's not good for the worms. Of course they all come back, but disturbing the soil is not what they want. But obviously I have limited time and I can't do all of this by hand. There are other methods. Raised beds are very popular. And of course one can put a big mulch on the whole thing. Again, it's about resources going into the garden. Everything that goes in has to be grown somewhere else, even if that's compost or grass or whatever it is. The fruit cage is a bounty, even though we don't look after it very well. And in there we've got gooseberries, black currants, red currants, and a few raspberry canes, a naughty ash tree growing up at the front. And all of those fruit trees have been here for over 20 years. So they were transplanted from the previous site, which was further near the tent. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Check out those daffs. Are they not gorgeous? When I'm not talking, I hope you can hear the birds. That's one of the bounties of the garden, isn't it? They say that if you want to be happy for a day, get drunk. If you want to be happy for a while, have a girlfriend. And if you want to be happy for life, take up gardening. But don't imagine that it's not hard work. Another note of thanks to a good friend. If you look down there, you'll see the stump of a tree. And that tree was just like this tree here, rising up very high, 30 meters. That's a hornbeam. And I love hornbeam, and I was very reluctant to take her down. But a couple of years ago, my friend Noel Hutton came in and quite expertly and quite amazingly took the tree down without touching the greenhouse or the plots or the hedge or the fruit cage. And he felled it just along this line here, absolutely perfectly. And now the reason I took it down was because it was overshadowing the greenhouse. You can see now at 11 o'clock that a lot of light is going in there from this angle. But when that tree was still up, it was shading the greenhouse. And so it wasn't getting the light and it wasn't getting the warmth that is beneficial. Another huge note of thanks to Eddie Gargle, who built this. Have a look at those, the craftsmanship up there. I mean, that is just beautiful. Beautiful workmanship. Eddie came to us wanting to learn about organic growing 25 years ago. And he was a carpenter from Austria. Really very talented. He cut every piece of wood on the ground first and drilled every piece of wood on the ground first and then constructed it. And it was perfect, as you can see. And this has been, again, standing for 20 years. What's in the roof is Ondex. It's by stretched polyethylene, I believe. So it lasts a lot longer than the Perspex that one can buy. And it's really been a bounty. We've had grapes a few years. Many thanks to Robin Harvey for this vine, and we've added to it. There are another couple of vines, and as you can see, they're a bit chaotic. We've put in a few citrus for fun, and this is an olive tree. And there are a couple of citrus there, one in the background, 2 peach trees, which are beginning to come into blossom up at the top there. What we'll be doing is we'll be clearing the ground in the next week or two so that it's ready to take the tomatoes. Obviously those are very important chairs here because gardening involves some deep thought as well as some slave labor. And the hammock, which you can't see in the background, that's just an illusion. It obviously doesn't get used by anybody. Ever. A couple of avocado trees which have never fruited. They got very badly damaged in that cold wind a few weeks ago. And a banana tree which grew from another banana tree. And we used to have 3, but they haven't done so well. And we nearly had fruit one summer, but not quite. This is a very special feature that we're coming to here. This is a stream in the garden. As you can see, it needs to be dug out. All the silt is collected in this silt trap here. I use this basin to pump water into the reservoir, which you might have seen at the side of the greenhouse, and then pump it from the reservoir through the pipes in the greenhouse to water the tomatoes. But we discovered this by accident. We've been living here for several generations, and when the place was abandoned in fear in 1917, it was allowed to run away with itself. So when we arrived, the ground was about this high, and the stream meandered down to the end. And I discovered it by accident one day. Oh, look, noisy geese. Watch out for them. They're rather fun, aren't they? The eggs are fantastic. A feast. So originally when we came into the garden, the stream came over this bridge that we're now standing on. And after a lot of work, including slave labour from my two boys, who were about 3 years old at the time, we uncovered the beautiful Granite Aqueduct, which comes under the wall, comes into the garden, runs through, and it would have been used for irrigation, possibly water, and the silt traps at the front and the end down there to clean it. You can see the ducks like to go in for a bit of a clean up there. But it really is a bounty. And another interesting aspect of this garden is the wall here. Perhaps you can see that the back wall is curved. And I think that just catches the sun. There's a lot about this garden that I don't know. But one of the things I do know is that that wall is amazing. And you can't build something like that today. Another friend who's helped me a lot around, Paddy Byrne, is an engineer, and he told me that these walls are basically built to lean on themselves, so they can support themselves, but they do need to be maintained. My father invested a lot to have the wall repointed about 30 years ago, but as you can see, it's my turn, and that's another rather big job, but volunteers welcome, volunteers welcome. We've planted these fruit trees here, cherries mostly, and we've got a few apples around the edge. We put in the cherry trees around the stream. This is what you may call plot 7, which is an extended plot which I just use for whatever needs to go in. So I've done beans here a little bit, and I put in this plot a couple of years ago just to give myself some extra space, because I had a lot of broad bean seeds and French bean seeds, and we like beans, and they're popular. They're a great source of protein. Broad bean is one of the best foods you can have, I think. Something like 26% protein in there, fibers, trace elements, minerals. And quite versatile. And we're still eating beans from last year in the kitchen, so that means that you can go through the winter with those beans if you've got a freezer, or another way of preserving them. Lactic fermentation is a talent which we're working on. So those are the plots. We're just going to keep going. Now remember, this is a smallholder's garden, so it's not going to be tidy because there's always too much to do, and there's going to be machinery because we're trying to do it all. And now, Noel, you're not going to like this, I'm sorry, but here is the baler, still outside, still not in the shed. We have covered it a little bit, and we do try to maintain it, but it is a challenge. Should we show our audience the most difficult thing about this square baler? And this is for doing the hay, which we'll be doing in July. And I do like doing hay because it really is the foundation of agriculture. Without hay, you're nothing. And that's the knotter. I mean, who would ever thought that a machine can make a knot like this? Well, it does. Noah will also be berating me, quite rightly, and I really appreciate all of his help over the years and all of his guidance, gentle and experienced talent. He is a wizard. Is that these bales should have been removed at the end of last season. So, get on it, Tom. No more lollygagging. What do you think this is? Some kind of holiday camp? It's my grandparents' caravan. You can see all the pellet holes in the side from the children. It hasn't survived very well. But the nice thing is that they got a lot of use out of it and a lot of fun. And there's the tractor and the cutter. That's a disc mower for cutting the hay. We'll come to that in a minute. I'm going to give you a quick peep at the tidy hole, as also known as, what's that? Come on, Pam, I know you don't want to see it, but let's go and have a look. Now, I don't know what the lighting's going to be like in here, but we need tools. Chainsaws, 1, 2, 3, 4. Strimmers, 2. Mowers not used a lot. The two-wheel tractor, which you saw in the greenhouse, takes a flail. Lots of tools, and we've got another shed in there where we've got the grinders and the welder and such like. Poultry feed in the old stable. This is where Granny used to keep the donkeys. Cement mixer for building things. The turner. This beast here is invaluable outside the garden for bringing in timber. It's a Chinese-built machine. Dongfeng is the manufacturer. They're one of the biggest manufacturers in China. It's sold under a Land Legend brand. And I got it with all the bits and bobs. Front loader is very valuable for moving soil, road surfaces and woods. The trailer is for principally for bringing in timber, which we use to heat the house and cook on most of the time. And for moving soil, we've used it to clear drives, we've used it to lay drives with the 804. And the log pile's looking better now than it was at the beginning of winter, as it should. So, over there is the pleasure garden, as you might call it. That's really been maintained by Pam. Now, should we have a look outside the garden? Because we're going to be spending some time outside the garden and we can have a quick lay of the land. It's quite nice. During the course we'll be looking at tools. I've shown you some of the power tools as we've walked around this area, the tractor and such like. We'll also be spending time on the two-wheel tractor, which is absolutely essential if you're doing a small-scale horticulture. Or let's say, not bigger than a home garden. A home garden size one person can do without the tractor. Now, we'll be looking at spade. Bring your wellies. I'll give you the spade. Shovel. That's what's going to be in use for clearing that silt trap. Another shovel, quite good on the flat roads. Fork. What we didn't see, and the slasher can be handy if the strimmer doesn't work on the riverbank. Also known as the briar hook. There we go, deadly. Deadly. Pickaxe and sledge. Surprising how handy a sledge and a lump hammer can be. I keep the lump hammer in the footwell of the tractor. Probably an indication of what a great mechanic I am. Whoops. Oh. So we'll be out here. What you can see on the ground there is alder, which is slated for some sort of construction projects because it's tall and thin. Did you know that Venice is supported on alder? the piles that support Venice are made out of alder. They're all in the water. It survives in water, but outside water it'll deteriorate quickly. I thought that was fascinating. And it's almost like a weed. All of these are self-seeded and just grew up. And if you follow that muddy path, you'll be coming down to the river. And we'll spend a bit of time walking on the river just because it's a beautiful habitat. But mostly out here is to see where we have a shelter for the tractor, hedge cutter, flail, and other tools which are used. The field up there is currently got sheep in it, or will have sheep in a few weeks. They're currently lambing, but we'll be in another field above the country bog for cutting the hay in July. At the end you can see a couple of pillars from the old house, which were brought down very kindly by Quilcher. And they also planted that small coppice of oak trees as a memorial to my grandfather. What? Okay. We'll have a quick look at these beehives over here, which are a home brew, and we'll spend more time on them during the course. But they are a bit of a DIY. Now, you won't be familiar with this kind of beehive probably because it's a people's hive, a ware hive, and these are just open boxes. These ones are in construction. You can see I've got if you come up here, Pam, you can show the different widths of these three and those four. And they basically stack on one another. This one here has got ridges into which I'll put top bars, and then the other I'll put rods through. And what will happen is the bees will inhabit the hive and they will build their own comb down from the top bars, and the bars in the other boxes underneath are to hold the comb once they build through it, so that when you put a wire between the boxes to release them, they don't all drop out.
The smell.
And the smell, this is regular timber from the shop, the oils probably, and tallow, and we've coated it with a mixture that we created on our own craziness of linseed oil and beeswax, and coated it. Most of it was done. Those were built by Tamandra and Richard, so many thanks to them. And Tamandra did a lot of work coating those, and we'll see if they work. The one we have is from Tanguy de Tulguet, Dunmore County Country School, an amazing gardener. If you can go on one of his courses, do. It's a nice opportunity to have a look at the Darwin's barberry. That was nearly wiped out in the snow of 2010, and it really was just a few sprigs left, and we're very lucky that she's come back, because it's a beautiful, beautiful plant. Very prickly, a bit like gorse. Gorse is, of course, one of those other plants that is now in flower and a valuable source of pollen to the bees. Not so much nectar, but it's what they need. Anything goes at this time of year. And the bees will be out later. Once it gets above 10 degrees, the bees tend to come out of the hive and start foraging, looking for resources. We probably won't spend much time in the bike shed. Do you want me to lift that up? Okay. Although, again, having a bike is good. My bike has been out of commission for a long time, which is a shame, because this is the best time to get in the woods. Oh, I see. My yoga teacher is giving me instruction. Am I not lucky to have a yoga teacher in my life? Gentle guidance. Usually I use a much more vicious kind of guidance. This kind. But I use it on myself enough. So there we have it. One of the most important parts of any garden, and we all forget it in our life, the compost heap. I've spoken about the compost heap at length in other talks, but let's have a quick look at it. You've got a burning pile over there. Don't really want to burn things. For the most part, I try and leave piles of wood in the field just to rot down, because, carbon and all of that sort of stuff. So this is compost pile, and we can call this 2 and this 1. I've just dug that and spread it onto the plots a week ago. And so what we'll do now is we'll cover this one and let that one sink. It'll shrink to half its size, and we'll get some nice compost out of that. And we'll start filling this side now, this year. And these are a very interesting feature. In fact, this is a good place to see it. What I'm standing in is the original cold frame from the farm once upon a time, when the walled garden was created. The walled garden was created in what I think of as the dot-com boom of the 1800s, which was actually a horticultural boom. And people like Darwin running around the world discovering new plants, new animals, and trying to paint a picture of life. And many people were building walled gardens and importing exotic plants like the rhododendrons you may see, and planting different Mediterranean plants and such like, and really trying to understand nature. In Ireland we invested a lot in animal husbandry, whether it be the cattle or the sheep or the pigs. But this would have been the cold frame, and if you look over there you can see the top wall of the garden rises up, and that's where the original greenhouse was. That was knocked down in 73. It was a beautiful greenhouse, but it did not survive the ravages of time and neglect. So you'd seed your plants in there. Once they sprout, you'd bring them out here, and there would have been glass over the top. They would have acclimatized to the spring coolness, and then been taken into the garden. And in fact, the garden was around there as well, and also down where the lawn is. But things have changed in time. Again, this is another area that was just overgrown. And I think the last thing that was grown here was potatoes in the 70s and possibly into the 80s by Paddy Lennon. Paddy and Marianne lived up the top of the hill and helped out here a lot. Now, quickly a run through this year. Plot 1, what's that going to be? That's beans. Plot 2, now that's going to be the gourds. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do the gourds because they're quite intense and I need to put more fertility into the soil. So I might sow a green manure there, like the beans, or intersperse it. But we'll see. If somebody would like to donate a bit of manure, please do. It's always welcome and really makes a huge difference. So after the gourds, we have the root vegetables. So this will be onion and carrot. The carrots are absolutely amazing. It took us 15 years before we started getting a decent crop of carrots. We've kind of worked it out. I think we've had 3 years when we've had good crops, isn't it? Something like that, Pam? And they really are a bounty. You can't get them. Carrots that taste like that. And anyone who's tried them agrees. Now, what are we going to have in here? That's going to be potatoes in here. And we keep our potatoes from the previous year and then try and put them in. And sometimes we brine new crop, new seed potatoes, but usually we can use the potatoes from the previous year. This is going to be leaves, so that will be salad crop. And one of my favorites is chard, because it's a hardy crop and it's very versatile. Whereas spinach is difficult, lettuces nobody wants to buy, they can be difficult. So we might do a bit of spinach and a few lettuce, but chard is a winner. And then the brassicas go down here, which again, we just harvested the last little brassicas a week ago. In fact, there are some sitting outside the kitchen waiting for us. And again, aren't we lucky? And just before we say goodbye, I thought it would be interesting to have a quick look at some of the tools. So the red thing up there is a 5-prong dibber. I use that when I'm planting the beans and it speeds things up a lot. This is an earthway seeder, which I can use for some seeds. It doesn't work that well with all of them, but with some of them it will just fly through. And what you can see there is the wheel. Let me see. sorry. There we go. And so that's for small peas, it says on it. And there are a selection of discs which you can put on there to plant whatever seed you want to put in and hopefully get an appropriate. And here are the other discs. And my very tidy potting table. Don't you think it's tidy? Shh. And voila. The dibber, rake, hoe. That's a potato plough. You can see that. That was courtesy of Gustav. Thank you, Gustav. Amazing man. Very diligent, very talented. Really transformed the place. Made the vegetable garden look like a flower garden. This is again a very handy rake for clearing the weeds out. And what else? Oh, the swivel hoe, one of my favorites. Definitely get a swivel hoe. Now, I haven't been able to find a good handle because the handle should be an extra 30 centimeters, ideally. And this is just a broom handle or something. It's fine. But this boy is dangerous. This came from Switzerland. I've changed the blades a couple of times in 20 years. You can get those from Tanguy. He sells those, and it's a very valuable tool. What else can we point at? Oh, okay. Very important, the two-wheel tractor. As I was saying before, this one's Italian built. They do a lot of horticulture in Italy. It takes a flail. That's a tiller. It's got a front-loaded mower. You can put the trailer behind it. It's got a potato lifter, which I've actually used, and a plough. So, that was a pretty good run around, wasn't it? Still need to fix the door. Not much spraying happens here, sometimes a little bit of detergent solution to reduce the infestation of bugs. So our plan is to spend an hour a month for the next 7 months walking around the garden, showing you things, sharing the stories of mistakes, sowing seeds, weeding, strimming. We'll get out, do some logging maybe. Might be a bit of maintenance because it all helps. If you're a smallholder, if you're trying to make a living on the edge of civilization, that's a good idea. It's a great way to live. It certainly gives one freedom. So I hope you'll join us online or in person if we can do that. We can certainly do socially distance things in this place. So we're fairly open-minded about that, provided we have sensible people. We don't want anyone to get hurt. But we do want to have a bit of fun. And I have made a lot of mistakes over the years, as you might imagine from our little stroll around. And I hope you'll join me. Have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy the sun. Enjoy nature. Live life. Love nature. Bye.